Yeah, and I also on that note, wanted to get your thoughts on, because I feel like I'm pretty hyperstimulated again. Like I don't have really any physical symptoms, although when I'm thinking more anxiously and not containing well, I will physically show, like maybe sweating or redness in the face and whatnot. So in
Yep.
that sense, like I'll get physical symptoms, but it's because of the worry and
Yep.
what's happening with it versus like, I don't have like any of the other physical symptoms that people often describe, or like dizziness or anything
Right.
like that. So I guess I'm fortunate in that sense, but the
Hmm.
psychological stuff, I feel like almost, how do I describe it? Like if I'm not focused on a task, like very focused, the the kind of, how do I describe it? Like this the soup of your like mind or like automatic thoughts,
Yeah.
it's almost like entirely negative and fear based at this point, and it could
Yeah.
be related to the fears that we've talked about. It could be, who knows, like it could be another crazy thought that's just like weird and bizarre.
Yeah.
Did you And so it kind of presents some complications, like I find myself having to contain all the time.
Yeah.
And is that is it's kind of hard to find that balance between like I'm containing versus like fighting with it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask your thoughts on that. Like, did you find that also, like when you were going through your struggle and you were really hyperstimulated, were the automatic thoughts that were popping up? Like for me, it's like it's like constantly fearful. I mean, I recognize that I have control and I have free will, and that when my voice is talking,
Yeah.
I can reinforce containment. I can reinforce like, no, that's like not true. This is just anxiety.
Yeah.
Calm down, relax. Like I always have that ability, and I know I almost like can tell the difference between like that voice, obviously between that voice and like the anxious automatic thoughts. But like, what is the when those are coming just like so frequently? It's almost like your automatic thoughts have like one frequency, and it's like fear,
Yeah.
and it's your
Yeah.
different fears, and it just kind of as it just like jumps around to the different ones. Like if you're
Yeah.
not it's not going to rise out of me with like whatever, like the thought of losing control, then it'll go back to like the spiritual stuff, or
Yeah.
something else, and or like or maybe they'll say like you're never going to sleep again, or like
Yeah.
what if you like your life is destroyed because you can't like go back to sleep normally, and like it just
Yeah.
like jumps around.
Yeah.
And but it's like I'm in kind of like this hyperstimulated state where I have awareness. Like I know exactly like 90-95% of like my automatic thoughts are fear based. But
Yeah.
when you struggled, like were you just constantly containing throughout the day if you weren't like really focused on something else?
Oh, totally. For me, it was like a constant tug of war.
Yeah,
The brain's firing in one direction, I'm pulling it back to the other.
that's right.
I think another thing, there's another aspect here. Certainly stress is going to be one of them, hyperstimulation rate. That's definitely a factor here.
Hmm.
You probably wouldn't have the things going on if you weren't hyperstimulated. But I think a larger issue here is some of the unresolved underlying factors you're dealing with.
Hmm.
When I recovered, I was completely unaware of my people pleasing, wanting to have certainty, black and white thinking, not really good boundaries. All of those were playing into the thoughts that were running in my head. Now, when I
Hmm.
recovered from hyperstimulation, that was good. I mean, because I got rid of a lot of my symptoms, over the course of time, they subsided, which was great. But then I had a lot of cognitive work to do. And I wish someone at that point would have pointed that out to me because it was part of the reason I probably took longer to recover than I think people can. So going after those underlying factors can make a huge difference, especially boundaries, because we can
Hmm.
apply boundaries in our relationships externally. We can also apply boundaries in our thought life, which was huge for me.
Hmm.
What I chose to dwell on and what I chose to dismiss. Uncertainty was another huge piece for me. I hated uncertainty. I needed to know,
Hmm.
especially when my stress is up. I needed certainty. And that's why, we develop obsessive, behaviors is because we're looking for that certainty. But as you know, a
Hmm.
lot of cases in our world, we don't have certainty. So you have to learn how to deal with uncertainty. And this is where resilience is super important. Because if a person develops resilience, then we don't need certainty because we know that no matter what happens, we're still going to be okay. Because if you look at anxious people, we're always threatened about, the worst case scenario. And often because we grew up in, not so nice circumstances where we had to be fearing all the
Hmm.
time, we just
Hmm.
carry that forward into our life. But there's a whole different way of living. We can live with a lot of uncertainty and even threats and still do fine once we change our behaviors and approach and how we cope with those things. So some of those underlying factor work might be really helpful to you, especially with the thoughts, because usually thoughts are a combination of stress and behaviors. And, just
Yeah.
from our conversation, you do have some of those behaviors that would probably benefit you by going after.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's the certainty is what I guess like the fear of losing control. Like I want certainty that I'm not going to lose control,
Yep.
or spiritually, I want certainty that I, will go home to God at some point. And
Yeah.
is it accepting an element of uncertainty even in those situations, or like, you know what I mean? Because I feel like
Yeah.
those are the two ones that nag at me the
Yeah.
most.
With those, you can get 100% certainty, especially as a
Mm,
Christian, you have 100% certainty.
yeah.
That's why he came. We always
Yep.
want to remember, again, like I mentioned earlier, he already knows all the sins we're going to do until we die. Like this is
Mm,
no surprise to him, right?
yeah.
He
Yeah.
came and saved us anyways, and he knows that we're going to struggle. I think all Christians struggle with some form of sin and upsetness in their lives at times. And so he already knows that. So
Mm,
we do have certainty there. We don't have to worry about hell if we are committed to Jesus. And the
mm,
second part about control is we do have control. We have 100% control of every action we do because it's a process. We have to first think about doing something, then we have to think about how we're going to do it, then we have to willfully act on it. So we're always in control of those things, even though sometimes it might feel like out of control or automatic behaviors. We just become more aware of the decision and action process, which means we're always going to be in control. So you can have certainty on those things. Now, there's a qualifier. If we have some medical conditions and things that have happened, if we get into accidents and we lose some, part of our mobility, whatever, we may not have complete control in those situations, but those are rare. And even in
mm,
those situations, there's usually people around to help us, keep us safe. Just thinking of my wife's father, he had a stroke and developed dementia. He couldn't remember a lot,
mm,
but there's loved
mm,
ones around him that helped him all the time. So he was never in danger. So that's one
mm,
thing we always want to trust. And another way you can really lean into Christ here is that if we put him in charge of our lives, he's responsible for all that happens to us. And if we
mm,
run into some negative consequences of things, he's still responsible for us. And he takes
mm,
that responsibility very seriously. So as a Christian, we're never out of control. Either we control it through our actions or he'll control it if we, give that over to him. And for me, one of my greatest prayers was, turning my life over to him. Everything. Everything is his. He's in
mm,
control of absolutely everything. And so when I have concerns about things, well, Lord, you're in control of this. Whatever you send or allow, I know there's a purpose and I know you'll get me through it. So I'm not going to worry about it, which gives me great, confidence and courage going through those things. Now, does everything that come into our lives be nice and pleasant? No, we have challenges. That's life.
mhm, mhm.
But as a Christian, he'll get us through those things. And I've seen him do that way, way more times than I could even possibly believe. While we
Yeah.
struggle for a while, he's still there. He still knows what we're going through and he'll get us through that, which again lowers a lot of anxiety, right?
Yeah. No, no, it does. I mean, I've been praying a lot, and I feel like, I have to get away from like there's going to be some like split that God's going to intervene, and like I'm just going to be okay. It's
Yeah.
that I don't know if you got that too. It's like the faith that having faith that He knows you're struggling and He's giving you the resources, and that's me talking to you. It's me, I'm working with Vince now through your website, and Vince has been great. It's any number of things that he's bringing into my life that are helping me, but
Hmm.
it's tough when I'm continuing to struggle and like sometimes, just to be perfectly honest, like question my faith because of the psychological stuff it is leading to a great deal of suffering for me, even though like
Yeah.
outwardly I'm just like getting up and going, trying to do my best and go to work and take care of my
Yeah.
kids and my family, but on the inside there is a lot of suffering happening, and it's perhaps because I'm not doing the right work and consistently enough. But there
Or
is
this
that kind
could,
of element. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
yeah, yeah, this could be just a season in your life too. The skills that God wants us to develop are what are they? Endurance, patience, long
Mm,
suffering. Well, we don't get those. Endurance, we don't get those unless we have to endure and be patient and struggle. But
yeah.
those are the skills. I mean, when I look back at my days of working through that stuff, it was tough. There was days when I thought, well, I'm never going to make it. But as I
Mm,
was accomplishing these things, and I look back, wow, they've been super valuable to me my entire life. So
hmm.
uh, even though we struggle, I think, he knows the length, he knows the time, and, there's a purpose in it all, and we will get through it if we just persevere. And all those skills that we just talked about, you'll have, which will benefit you and your family for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's instilled a great deal of, I guess, my desire to show compassion towards others and be in service of others, and once this once I kind of get through this period, which has been very challenging, admittedly, I
Yeah.
really want to refocus attention on how can I be of service to others,
Yeah.
whether that's through my job or whether that's through, things that I do in my off time, and that's like I have a strong sense of wanting to do that,
Hmm.
that I have a calling to do that. It's just, it's I guess first things first with getting through all
Yep.
this.
Well, he's equipping you right now so you can do those
Yeah,
things.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Um,
my wife, as a nurse, she always said, there's times in a life when we have to just be a good patient.
yeah.
A lot of things that we want to do, that's not the right season. And so during that season, we have to develop patience, be a good patient, do the work we need to do, sit on the sidelines until we're ready to go. Because even that experience, God can use in a huge way, once you're through all
Mm,
this. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, thank you for that.